Welcome to Garden City Church, a place where you can belong before you believe. If you'd like to partner with us here at the channel, there's 3 ways you can do that. You can like, subscribe, share this video with a friend, or you can partner with us financially. You can do that through our website or by mailing us a check. We love you all so much. Let's get into the Word with George.
Our goal here at our church is to be Jesus-centered. So we really try to look through the lens of Jesus at our world, whether that's theologically, philosophically, practically, ethically. Like, how does Jesus help us live in this wild world that can sometimes seem so upside down? And our hope is to help everybody that sets foot on in this place or meets someone from our church. We just help people join Jesus on this journey toward flourishing personally, but also culturally, because we want you to do well, but we know that when you do well and help other people do well, like, the community can flourish. So that's our hope, is that we can help you move forward on your journey. And I'm so glad that you're here. Now, I wanted to start today with a quote, just to get us, here's the focus for today. This is a quote by Tim Keller. It says this: "In every time and culture, this principle holds. The strong must disadvantage themselves for the weak, the majority for the minority, or the community frays and the fabric breaks." It's interesting in the cultural moment that we're in that this could even be a little controversial for Christians. I've been in conversations over the last, year or two, where the idea of disadvantaging oneself in the workplace or in the world we live in for somebody else, or something that seems or appears weaker, or something that a group of people that's not the majority, like, that's just slowing me down. And we need to let, I've heard a lot of, we need to just let people who are strong, fast, the best, just do their thing. And I think it's so tricky because it's touching on a real tension, because God has given so many gifts. I mean, if we don't have time for this, but how many gifts and strengths do you think are just in this room right now? Like, some incredible giftedness, incredible minds, incredible work people are doing. This church is amazing. The more I've gotten to know it, the more just thankful I am. So there's these gifts that God gives us, but we live in a world where sometimes it's tempting to just want to run and do our own thing for our own things and have no inhibition, so we don't have to worry about anybody else. But what that does is it pulls us away from using the gifts God has given us, not only for our own benefit or the benefit of the corporation or the benefit of progress and progressing ourselves, but it comes at the cost of and the expense of people who sometimes need our gifts and need us to slow down, or to share what we have, or to just listen and stand still, or to let others progress at times. And that might sound, it might sound difficult at times. Have you ever been frustrated in moments of your life where it's like, I just want to run, I just want to move forward, I just want to, I have this gift, I have this ability, why should I have to wait for anyone? Yet Keller reminds us that Christian compassion and justice require disadvantaging ourselves for others. If you think about it, this Mother's Day, who of us who have had wonderful moms or mom figures, and I know that that's not everyone, but if you have, or you've seen somebody who has had a wonderful mom figure, how much have they sacrificed and disadvantaged themselves for their kids or for you to have what you have and be who you are? So we forget God's church is a family, and a family takes care of each other, and we have gifts to give, and we have to carry attention of being able to move forward and use our gifts and run, but also care about others. It's a tension to be managed, because I'm sure you could go too far one way or the other. Now, when I use the word like compassion or justice in Christian circles, Can you feel it, like a little bit of tension in those words? I mean, right now you have Christians arguing over those words. Like, we can't use the word compassion. You can't use the word justice. But the problem with that is that the scriptures and Jesus' teachings are filled with those concepts and those words, that he himself embodied justice. You don't see any more justice than when you see Jesus on the cross offering self-giving love to the world. Neither do you see more compassion than you look at the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And so when we use those words, I'm going to just go into this topic, hopefully in a way that's helpful for us today in our day and age. Compassion or justice. We look to Jesus to be our primary definition of those things, because there can be a lot of cultural importing of meaning into those. We want to start with Jesus and work out from there. So when I talk about justice, we're going to talk about compassion and justice, requiring that we disadvantage ourselves at times for the sake of others, for the sake of the least of these, for the sake of people that Jesus cares about. When we use those words, compassion and justice, we're defining them by Jesus. So justice simply is putting things right. I know that might sound controversial these days, but how many guys like when things are put right? That's justice. Things are being made right. And this idea of having to disadvantage ourselves, sometimes it's a struggle to think about that. I don't like that. Sometimes I'm like, why do I have to disadvantage myself and wait for this person to walk so slowly across the street? I could just go. I could do it, Sarah. And she's like my conscience sometimes. No, you got to disadvantage yourself this moment. How many of you have had a season or a moment in your life or something that you've carried your whole life that is a place or an area of weakness where you need help, or a moment where if you didn't have help, you wouldn't be here or you wouldn't be where you're at? It's easy not to want to disadvantage ourselves when we forget that we have needed others to disadvantage themselves for us. Are you with me? All right, so we're going to jump into the scripture here on this concept that Keller hits. Anytime the strong disadvantage themselves for the weak, the healthy for the wounded, the majority for the minority, the community can flourish. Otherwise, our communities are diminished. So we're going to look, this is the last week of kind of looking through different lenses and different strata, if you will, at the Good Samaritan. We're going to be looking at it from the lens of our resources. How do we look at our resources, the things that God has given us to bless the world? How do we handle that? How do we disadvantage ourselves in ways that can help others, or how do we advantage ourselves in ways that just help us? So let's look at Luke chapter 10. Starting in verse 30, Jesus says this: a man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he encountered thieves. How many of you guys have experienced something being taken, stolen, ever? Have you guys ever come home and the house has been ransacked? I remember being really young, 5, coming home from vacation. This is in Southern California, and everything was askew and things were missing. I was like, what happened? And Mom and Dad were like, oh, we've been robbed. And I just remember being so mad, so angry, imagining who would do this and feeling a sense of just violation. Who was in here? Someone was in our home. Someone took this. Why would they do that? It just was so angering. About 2.5 years ago, I was woken up, just shaken awake by my wife, and dead of night. And she was like, there's thieves. And I was like, what? She was like, there's thieves. I can hear them outside. And I kind of, after taking a moment to orient myself, I started listening, and there was a ton of noise coming outside in the middle of the night. And there was banging going on. And it was in areas that no one should be. It was in our backyard. And I was like, what is happening? And there was a weird noise. I can't really do it very well, but it's kind of this weird noise, and then wham, wham. And then she was like, you need to go down there and check out what's happening. And I was like, but I'm in bed. And she's like, no, you need to go down. And I was like, why do I need to go out there right now? She's like, because you're the man. You never say that to me except in dangerous situations. And so finally, with some cajoling, I was went downstairs. I opened the slider door and I looked out, And I heard all this banging and all this like just clatter and this a weird noise again. And then wham, wham, and a light went on, a motion light finally went on. And I was like, who's out there? And I heard this, dude, it's your neighbor, Mark. And I had not met my neighbor because we were brand new to this house. And I looked over and there was my neighbor that I hadn't met yet, named Mark, with like a total 1980s vibe, like a Pantera shirt, shorts with like thermals underneath it. Think like Goonies, like Rand, like the older brother, just looking like that, like the bandana and stuff. And he was just like, hey, what's up? And he had a pole in his hand. And he was like, oh, I'm just getting rid of the raccoons, man. And I was like, oh, go. And he's very similar. I love him because he's very similar. He reminds me of the Dude. If you know the Dude, you know what I'm referring to. And he's like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of, there's like multiple families that have grown, they've just moved into our trees. They're eating all our stuff. Kimmy wanted me to get rid of them. That's all I'm doing. I was like, oh, okay, that's great. He's like, great to meet you. I've been wanting to meet you. Wham, wham, wham. And he got those raccoons the heck out of there, those thieves that were taken from us and getting in our garbage. I went upstairs and Sarah was like, who is out there? And I was like, a real man. Right, Mark. A real man. But in this story, on this road, it was notorious for thieves being robbed and even worse happening. And these thieves come along and they stripped the man naked, beat him up, and left him near death. They took everything he had. And if we put the kind of the lenses of how do we use our resources, what I see in this moment is this is an attitude of taking. The attitude that says, what's yours is mine. And you see that it's plural, thieves, like robbers. There's a few of them, right? So this means the way these guys look at other people is taking, what's yours is mine. And they look at partnership from the sense of partnering to exploit. They partner with others to exploit other people. Now, if we kept moving, the religious leaders come along. It says in verse 31, now it's just so happened that a priest was also going down that same road. When he saw the injured man, he crossed over to the other side of the road and went on his way. Likewise, a Levite, who's also someone who works at the temple, came by that spot, saw the injured man, crossed over to the other side of the road, and went on his way. So the religious leaders, whose job is to teach people how to love God and love others, they move away. And this attitude, I would call hoarding. Because this attitude says, what's mine is mine, not yours. So they don't actively attack or harm or take from this guy. They passively walk by and hoard. They withhold. This is mine. I don't have time. Whatever the excuses and reasons are. And the way they look at partnership is non-partnership. They pull themselves away. Imagine if the first religious guy had stopped, saw the other guy he works with at the temple and says, hey, we got to do something. And they worked together. Imagine how cool that would have been. None of that happens. There's an attitude of non-partnership, non-generosity, and hoarding. Now let's move to the Good Samaritan. Verse 33. This gives us a different vision, a different way. A Samaritan who was on a journey came to where the man was, but when he saw him, he was moved with compassion. The Samaritan went to him, bandaged his wounds, tending them with oil and wine, and then he placed the wounded man on his own donkey, took him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day, he took 2 full days' worth of wages. I don't know about you, but 2 full days, that's considerable. And gave them to the innkeeper. And he said, take care of him, and when I return, I will pay you back for any additional costs. And in this moment, the attitude I see is the attitude of generosity. This man sees a problem. He sees a hurt. He sees something broken. And he responds with a generous sense of justice, compassion and justice. He begins putting it right and making it right. Was it his responsibility? Was he the one who had done this? No. But he felt the compassion moved him to take on this responsibility. So this generosity has the attitude as what's mine is ours. What's mine is ours. And the attitude toward partnership is, I'm going to partner with others for the good. Even people I don't know, even people who might not have the same exact convictions as I do, I'm going to partner for doing the good. Even if they have a different philosophy of life that I disagree with or don't even know about, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to put it right. And I love it. He partners with the innkeeper and he says, here's like 2 days worth of my wages, gives it away and says, take care of him. And I'm going to be back. So there's accountability in this partnership. I'm going to be back. I'm going to come see I want him to be doing better than he is now. And these two guys partner together. Well, I'm assuming it's a guy. Maybe it's, the innkeeper was a woman, but usually in this time it's a male. These two people partner for the good of this man who's been injured. And he's been left with nothing. Didn't need to do that, and they did. And I love it because it teaches us that partnership, we can bring our gifts, our capacities, and our limitations. This guy was like, I can't do everything for him, and I don't have an in. You have that resource. I have these resources. Let's partner. Isn't that beautiful? And in the first two stories, you see partnership for evil and exploitation because what's yours is mine, and I'm going to take what I can take from other people. If I can be stronger, we can be stronger, we're going to take from you. And there's this attitude of bullying. If we have more and we're stronger, we're going to take from you. We live in a world that moves to that tune. And you can see that go up in the world and in the culture, and you can see maybe it kind of like rise and fade, but it feels like that's a real temptation these days. And then the religious give us this picture of, well, I don't have time, I don't want, what's mine is mine. I earned this. I can't do anything about this. I'm not going to do anything about this. What's mine is mine. It's not yours. And so they withhold and they hoard. Do you think a priest who's in like the higher echelon of society at that day and age would have money to help this guy? Yeah. And even if he didn't, was there something he could have done? But what's mine is mine, not yours. And so there's this non-partnership. There's this non-movement. It's this passive withholding. And we are called to generous justice, generous compassion. The way of Jesus leads us and like bends our heart toward that. Even if we're like, I don't know if I can or if I want to, or he leads us toward that. Jesus is always trying to expand our hearts because love, it's the hardest thing about love, God's love. And the hardest thing and the best thing about it is that it's always calling us to more. It's always inviting us to more. When we love someone and we give or we respond in a situation that was like, I gave what I had. And maybe it was like a sacrificial gift. Maybe it was just a little bit, but you gave and you did something. Jesus is like, that's wonderful, but I'm inviting you to more. Okay, Jesus, I'll do it. Trust you again. And you do it. And he's like, that's amazing, but I'm inviting you to more. Because he wants to expand the capacity of our hearts and lives so that we can be the humans he designed us to be. And there might be moments where it's like, are you kidding me? I've given enough. I've cared enough. I need, and there can be moments where you're needing to tap out on things, but Jesus still beckons us to love more. It's never like God's like, all right, you're done. You've met the love quota for your life. You're good. Go sit in the easy chair of grace for the rest of your life, spiritually retired from love. I just always think of Jesus saying, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. I remember this call to generosity makes me think of my son. I remember the day we signed the papers for this building, and we've never had our own building. We've always rented. If you didn't know the story, it's been a story. It's been a long journey. And we got this building, and it needed a ton of repair, but it was so exciting. I remember getting home after signing it with Peggy Campfield, who's on our board, and I got home and I was like, we bought the building, like it's ours. And the kids came running down, they were pumped, and Wes, who is so demonstrative, like if he is happy, right, Novella, he's like, yes, when he scores, or if the other team loses, he's the one kid on the field going, yes. If there's a piece of toast that popped up and he likes toast, he's like, yes. So I was like, we bought the building, and he was like, yeah, Dad, yeah. He's like, 1 second. And then he ran upstairs, and then I heard him rummaging around, and then comes down. And he had this little fat wallet filled with money. And he was like, Dad, when can I give this? And his grandparents have been really generous to him. Don't tell Novella. Oh, wait, she's here. Never mind. But man, I've seen adults have less generosity and excitement to be part of giving and changing and helping and making something beautiful. I've seen adults struggle to have that heart. Maybe as we get older, we sometimes move away from that, that joy, that childlike joy. But he was recognizing that to do something great, to make a difference, to build something beautiful, compassionate, and I hope in our case, the church that has compassionate justice flowing through it. To be part of that, we have to disadvantage ourselves. We have to become generous. And to impact the world around us, to have lives where people aren't like, man, that's the reason I don't go to church. And if we could flip that and be like, I don't know that I agree with them, but I really appreciate what they're doing. Maybe maybe that person would have a conversation someday about Jesus, about spiritual things, because they've seen an act of love or a loving person. That's what Jesus is designed. That's what he's inviting us into. But it requires that we disadvantage ourselves sometimes. Not all the time. Sometimes you're receiving the benefit from somebody else. There's a mutual giving and receiving. But man, wouldn't it be cool to be a church that's like West, that's just like, yes, when we get the opportunity, like at work, in the park, at the grocery store, at church, whatever it is, like the opportunity to be part of God's restorative movement of compassion, justice, and beauty. I want to read you guys a story. I'm going to read portions of it. This is found in Tim Keller's book, Generous Justice. It's so good. This is a story that stood out to me, so I'm just going to read it, but I want us to look at it from the lens again of compassion and justice, requiring that we disadvantage ourselves for the least of these, for others. And recognizing that this is the Jesus pattern. The world might have other patterns. We take or we withhold, but Jesus says we act with love and compassion and justice. So there's a professor from, I think it was Yale. Her name was Nora Ellen Croce. She wrote a book and did a big research project on this island in this area of Martha's Vineyard. And in the 17th century, a bunch of English folks had moved over from a certain location onto the island, and they had a genetic pattern of a lot of deafness that was inherited by kids and passed down. And so by the 19th century, there was a lot of deafness, a lot of folks who couldn't hear on the island. In fact, where is it? By the 19th century, 1 out of every 25 people in the town of Chilmark was deaf. In other small settlements, you could have a quarter of the people who could not hear. So it was a major issue. Now, in most societies, physically handicapped or disabled people are forced to adapt to the life patterns of the non-handicapped or non-disabled. But that's not what happened on the vineyard. Now, this is Keller writing. One time when Croce was interviewing someone, she asked what it was like, what the hearing people thought of the deaf folks that were in their community. And the response was this: well, we didn't think anything about them. They were just like everybody else. And Croce responded that it must have been necessary for everyone to write things down on paper in order to communicate with each other. And the man responded in surprise. He said, no. You see, everyone here spoke sign language. The interviewer asked if he meant the deaf people's families. Just the families spoke, right? He said, no. Everyone in town. I used to speak it. My mother did. Everybody spoke it. Another interviewee said, those people weren't disabled. They were just deaf. I treat them just the way I treated anybody. They were kind of surprised when she was asking those questions. And indeed, what had happened was that the entire community had disadvantaged itself en masse for the sake of a minority. Instead of making the non-hearing minority learn to read lips, the whole hearing majority learned signing. All the hearing became bilingual. So deaf people were able to enter into full social participation. As a result of doing this kind of justice, disadvantaging themselves, the majority, so that others could experience shalom or flourishing, it included people in the social fabric who in other places would have been excluded or fallen through the cracks. When they had socials or anything up in Chilmark, it says, why everybody would go, and the deaf enjoyed it just as much as anybody else did, and we used to have lots of fun. And sometimes if the crowd was primarily deaf, they would switch to just signing in these major socials. Everybody just be signing to each other using sign language, and they were fishermen and farmers and everything else. Everyone speaking sign language to each other just to be polite, and that's what we did. Deafness as a handicap largely disappeared. On Mother's Day, I can't help but think that it was a few moms that made this happen. You can see some dad just being like, well, why should I have to do that? And there's, a smaller group of people, and, there's most of us, why should I have to do it? And the mom being like, oh, you will do it. Let me see your hands, And there were unexpected gifts. Here's the cool thing. There were unexpected gifts in the community as a result of disadvantaging themselves. There was an advantage in the disadvantage. Check this out. There was the revelation of how hearing people had their own communication abilities enhanced through this. They found many uses for signing besides communication with the deaf. Children signed to one another during sermons in church. Isn't that great? I hope that's happening now. I would certainly do it if my dad was preaching when I was a kid. Now, they also saw that they would sign behind a teacher's back at school. Neighbors could sign to one another over distances in a field or even through a spyglass telescope. One woman remembers how her father would be able to stand on a windy cliff and sign his intentions to fishermen below. And another remembers how sick people who could not speak were able to sign and make their needs known to the doctors. In other words, the disadvantage that the hearing vineyarders, the islanders, assumed the effort and trouble to learn all the language actually turned out for everyone's benefit. Their new abilities made life easier, more productive. They changed their culture in order to include an otherwise disadvantaged group, but in the process made themselves and their society richer. Sometimes when you disadvantage yourself and you feel like you're giving so much to cross this border and help these people or this group or this person, there are riches, there is wealth that can never be seen or accessed until you go to a place of scarcity, a place of need, a place of hurt. There are blessings, there are riches, there's a wealth that you will never know, see, or access unless you go there. Amen? How many of you guys know what I'm talking about? How many of you had family members who have been sick or somebody experienced something that's really hard and people sacrificed and there were riches in that moment? Yeah. So a few of the advantages I want to talk about, and then I'm going to close this up for today. Is this speaking to anybody in here? I'm hoping. The advantage of disadvantage. The disadvantaging of ourselves on behalf of others makes us more like God. Jesus came to earth, to our broken world, to give his life to disadvantage himself so that we could have access, so that we could be part of the social heavenly fabric that God offers. Disadvantaging ourselves on behalf of others enriches our communities in ways that sometimes we would never know otherwise. Disadvantaging ourselves for those in need helps our whole world flourish. It helps less people fall through the cracks. It helps us see one another. Again, I can't help but think of it being Mother's Day and how many of us wouldn't be where we're at or who we are without moms and mom figures who have really cared for us. And how much did they give up? How much did they disadvantage themselves? I just want to bring us back to the moment that the man had everything stripped away from him on this in the story of the Good Samaritan. He was robbed and everything was taken. Everything was stripped away from him. And imagine you're the religious walking up. And there's someone who's beaten and bloodied, maybe even beyond recognition. Could you tell what tribe he's part of? In the Middle East, without like some kind of symbol, like they're largely at that time in that area, the Middle East looked very similar to each other. You couldn't tell Romans and Phoenicians and Jewish and Samaritans from each other very easily. Could you tell what faith, what religion, what race, what political party, the person who's broken and bloody on the side of the road, could you tell any of that? No, all of that had been stripped away. He was stripped down to his humanity. No way of knowing what kind of human he was, only that he was human. And so in our day and age, it's so easy to like focus on, are they in, are they out, are they this group, are they that group, are they this kind of person, that kind of person, are they up, down, left, right? There's so much tension. And Jesus, in his genius, his brilliance, strips back like all of that, those barriers that prevent us from loving, compassion, and from justice, and just doing the right thing, putting things right. And he pulls it all back and he said, who was the neighbor? The one who loved, the one who brought justice and was generous, gave what he had, did what he could, partnered with someone who could help. Sometimes it's that simple. We make love, compassion, and justice in our world so complicated. But is it complicated? I would submit, Jesus says, no. Loving is not hard to know, but it's hard to do. In our world, in our day and age right now, our nation's going through a leadership change, and anytime there's a leadership change at the top, the poor and vulnerable are the ones that are impacted the worst and the most. The Bible teaches us to care for, in this story of the Good Samaritan, the one who's vulnerable and broken and hurt, and human. We love them. We care for them. They don't have to have the political, religious, cultural badge that we prefer. Because one of the things that you see with Jesus is anytime we start throwing labels, we don't let them sit at our tables. We don't let people come and break bread with us. Jesus removes that. And I love that there's this moment where Jesus says to his disciples, or his disciples say to Jesus, we want to know the way of the kingdom. And so he teaches them the way of the kingdom. And Jesus makes it really clear. In this one story, he says, here's how you love. Lord, when did we see you hungry? When did we feed you? When did we do any of these things and take care of you? Because Jesus has said, hey, in this story, he's like, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you took care of me. When I didn't have clothes, you gave me clothes. When I was in prison, you came and visited me. And in this story, again, they're like, well, when did we do that? And Jesus said, whenever you did it to the least of these. Who are the least of these? Zechariah makes it really clear. Do not mistreat those who are widows, orphans, those who are immigrants, those who are poor, Don't even think evil against others in your heart. It's the people who we might think are on the other side of the line. He says, take care of them, widows, orphans, immigrants, the poor. And we're living in a day and age where they're being impacted the most. And I don't want to be a church that just walks by. I don't want to be a person who just walks by. At the end of service, I'm going to just give you a few ways that we as a community are trying to bless and love and disadvantage ourselves for the benefit of others. But right now I'm going to ask the band to come out. And as they come out, this next song, would you just take time to reflect on just the image that we see in the Good Samaritan, that Jesus paints this picture of folks who are taking what's yours is mine. There's folks who are just hoarding and withholding, not doing anything because what's mine is mine, it's not yours. And then the Good Samaritan, this cultural enemy, he's generous. He's a generosity image because what's mine is ours, and God's love flows through me. So would you just think about that image? Think about your world. Think about where you see those different stories going on, and think about how you could join the Jesus story in your life right now. And maybe open your hands, open your heart. So let's sing this song and reflect on that.
I will remember what you said. It's truer than where these feet have been. You carried me, even when pain is in the night. I will wait for joy to rise, like morning time. Tendeth my